I pinched myself, but I was there in the lobby of the ENT doctor. So was I ready for that? No.
Hello there, it's me, Steve Mellor, and welcome in to Growth Ready, the podcast that allows high performers to reveal the reality behind what it means to ready yourself for growth, the personal and professional challenges along the growth journey, while also allowing the high performance executive coach in me to satisfy his curiosity toward what drives optimal performance. On this episode, we welcome in Kenneth Lo, an AI strategist and two-time world champion track cyclist who has a personal story that will help us all understand the importance of prioritizing what matters in our pursuit of growth and how there are certain moments that we cannot fathom having to ready ourselves to endure. Hello, happy listener, and welcome back in to yet another installment of the Growth Ready podcast. I am so excited to have someone coming on that is yet the most recent representation of what a fantastic network can do. I'm so fortunate that I got introduced to our guest through a good friend of mine. And without any further ado, I want to bring in Kenneth Lo into the podcast. And Kenneth, like every guest that we have on now, I want to ask you right here from the outset, what does it mean to you to be growth ready?
Yes, so you can be ready. I think that's the fact. So you just have to be ready for whatever comes.
Right.
And I think just having the commitment to ride through whatever, defying expectations, and making incremental improvements. I think that kind of sums it up, at least my personal experience the past 11 months.
Yes, we're going to dive into the very recent trials and growth that you've gone through on your journey. But I love, it's what I love about this question is I never know what the heck's going to come out of the mouth of the person I'm talking to. And for you just go, you can't be ready. You can't be ready. You know, you just gotta accept that. You can't be ready. And it's such a definitive insight. And I want to start right there is to be so sure of a statement like that. What is it that you've experienced that allows you to say so definitively that you have to find a comfort with the fact that, hey, no matter what you do, no matter how often you do it, at a certain point, you have to just accept that you sometimes just can't be ready?
Yeah. On Valentine's Day, this past Valentine's Day, like 11 months ago, I was going to see my doctor to get a report, a piece of paper, so that I'll go on to my dinner with my wife. It was a simple, routine thing. But that's when I find out I got stage 2 cancer. You know why I went into the ENT doctor? I got a blocked nose. I wanted to get some allergy sprayed.
Yeah.
But instead, I got that piece of paper and I said, oh, okay, it's time to wake up from this nightmare. I pinched myself, but I was there in the lobby of the ENT doctor. So was I ready for that? No. And, the doctor didn't prep me and say, oh, I got some bad news for you. Come in and talk about it. It was like, come in and pick up this piece of paper.
Yeah. I already knew this, and even hearing another perspective of the story and just the absolute reality of that moment, because you didn't try to make it seem more dramatic than it maybe was. The drama and the emphasis and the magnitude of the situation speaks for itself. And it was as simple as someone welcomes you into a room and hands you a piece of paper, and boom, right there, you just go, wait, what the heck just happened? How did this piece of paper is changed immediately everything that you're about to do in the weeks and the months that are about to come. And so if you're able to go back to that moment, and here we are speaking to this notion of like, how can you possibly be ready for that? How do you start to process some of the initial emotional responses that you have just to simply get back on the horse and start taking some of the necessary steps that are required to just simply respond to what's just happened?
Oh man, that's just a loaded question. I'm not sure I'm there yet, to be honest, Steve. But I think the immediate reaction was, okay, I was the last appointment of the doctor that day. So I got escorted out and I was on the street and I said, oh my God, I still have to go break this news to my wife and most likely cancel the dinner.
Mm.
To be honest, it was such a blur. I wasn't expecting that at all. So I was very lost. And I think it was my wife that picked up the baton and said, okay, she had to be strong and she had to do some coordination and figure out what exactly happened and what the next steps are. So I was leaning on her quite a bit and really appreciative of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and even in my question there, I actually appreciate you just sort of saying like, who says that I am at that point yet? 11 months later, and so I actually appreciate you kind of challenging me on that. Is that here I am presuming here you are, this clearly in a great mood, in a great mindset today, ready to have this conversation with me. Me immediately falling into that assumption like, well, at some point he's kind of ridden the wave of this and he's come out the other side of this, and immediately you're just like, who says that has to be the case? Who says that I have to have found some level of acceptance or whatever it is? I don't want to speak for you, so I'd love for you just to kind of explain that for us now. Like, how is it you've been able to continue on? And I'm going to come back to that support system in your wife in just a second. But when you think about just your own perspective with this entire experience, how is it you've been able to just maintain what you've been able to maintain over this last year?
Yeah, that was rocky. First, I was very scared. I immediately that night I made about 100 calls. Okay, my track record is I make calls maybe like, once a year or something like that. I call my parents, not very good son. I call them like, a couple times a year. Immediately, I called my parents. I called my brother. I called my ex-girlfriends. I called some ex-wives and told them about the news. I say, well, I'm not saying goodbye, but I'm just telling you, just find out about this. So I was in full panic mode. And yeah, I don't know. There was a very emotional response. So I think my reaction was to like, let me reach out. I think I needed some help. I need to talk it out. And just through talking it out, okay, I actually find out a couple of my friends have gone through that. They didn't tell anybody. They went through it in kind of secrecy. They dealt with it their own ways. And then they open up, say, Ken, I actually deal with that 2 years ago. And look at me. It was a shit show for 18 months, 24 months, 36. But they're standing. Yeah. So they gave me the hope. They gave me the mental framework to kind of start crawling back to reality, if you will.
Yeah, and this is where we start to now bridge your experience to anybody listening to the show. And again, I am personally, praise God, someone who has yet to go through this kind of thing. Honestly, not had that many people even close to me that have gone through it either. I've been very much alienated to these kind of experiences throughout my 40 years. And as I listen to you now, though, I go, well, the way you've approached this kind of, smack over the head, that's come to you in this moment, the way you've approached it is there's such a blueprint here for dealing with the unexpected, which again is something we can all relate to. We can all relate to the unexpected. Now, the severity of the unexpected in your case versus my case, there's a difference there. But for you to acknowledge I'm lost and I have no idea what the next best step should be for me. The only thing I can really control right now is to lean on the people that I have access to. And that's about it. And that's what I'm hearing in your story, is that was almost the reality that you came to, was what else can I do except just lean on people and share with people what it is that's happening right now.
Yeah. And so over the past, last year or so, people reach out and say, Ken, you're such an inspiration. So what do you mean? I was a crybaby. You can find out on internet that I have many videos of me crying in the chair, getting infusion and all of that. And not because I was getting pity, not trying to collect any of that. I needed that. That was my out. That was my therapy. And I was getting a lot of support. So one of my best friends actually went through that. He came up with a list for me to ask my chemo doctor. What does it look like after the treatment? What is the cocktail? What are the side effects? Any of this permanent? He gave me a cookbook, a recipe, if you will. I use that, dump it into ChatGPT, and kind of like, because I got a rare kind of conditions. So I kind of, asked AI to help me craft those questions.
Yeah.
And man, if I wasn't open and honest and asking for help, and I wasn't even trying to be vulnerable. I was vulnerable. I wasn't trying. I was there already.
Yeah. That right there is, I want to stay on that for a moment.
Okay.
This idea of vulnerability, I mean, in my world, in coaching and just personal professional development, looking at organizational development, all these kind of things, the word vulnerability comes up countless times a day in terms of a sought after leadership trait, sought after aspect within cultures, within workplaces, etc. And something you just said here is you weren't trying to be, you just were. You just let the situation almost connect with you in such a real way that the only way you could respond was however your body wanted to respond, and however your emotions wanted to respond in that moment. Was that normal for you, or was this the situation bringing it out of you?
Oh my God, that takes a lot to unpack, Steve.
Yeah.
I've always been naughty and strong, little robust. So always like breaking things because I think things were poorly made back then. But strength has never really been a huge problem for me. But at that point, at first mentally, I was very weak. And soon after that, I was wheeled into a operation room, and it was surgery, it was chemo, it was radiation. I just had no strength. I had no stamina. I have no mental toughness. Anything that I was training for years and years in the velodrome, in the weight room, on the platforms, all of that, I couldn't have access to it.
Right.
And they said, oh my God, strength, I have been taking it for granted. So that's why I wasn't being vulnerable. I just didn't have the reserve to put on, not a facade. I couldn't even do the normal stuff that I think I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and this allows us to provide a little bit of context in terms of your journey up to this point. Because again, knowing what I knew this conversation could potentially be about today, the fact that you took us right there straight away, I'm just like, oh, smokes, here we go, baby. We're like 12 minutes in, and we've already covered so much. Anyone listening to this is probably just grabbing onto something right now and being like, where are we going to go with this episode? My gosh. But what this allows me to do now is just bring a little bit of context, is because, as you just alluded to there, you took strength for granted. You're someone who is a 2-time world championship track cyclist. Like that's significant. That's someone who I'd have to assume, based on the way you're talking, that's sort of almost, taking strength for granted. And again, I speak to this from my sport background. There is a point in my life when I look at how strong I was, how fit I was, how fearless I was. I'm like, dude, I am Superman. I am Superman. Like, get out of my way. I can do anything. I feel like I can do anything. And then you have an experience like this that grounds the crap out of you and just takes that away. And to your point, you're left with vulnerability. You're left with this whole new perspective on what strength looks like, or the inability to access it the way you typically would. I'm just talk anybody through this here, because there's going to be some people listening to this right now that are on the up and up. They are moving and they are growing and they are feeling good about the direction they're going in. If you could go back and talk to yourself 5-10 years ago, and think about the strength that you had, and then to your point, it was such a normal part of you, you took it for granted. What would you maybe tell yourself back then that could have even served you at that point, when you think about the perspective you now have, having gone through this past year?
Wow, I would be so much wiser if I was able to access that the time tunnel. So in track cycling or many sports, is about dedication, is reps, it is hard work, it is incremental improvement and marginal gains. Team GB, was a very good
I can
example.
tell you're a disciple and a connection of Lee Povey. I've heard all this stuff before. Come on now.
He sucked me into track
That's right.
cycling.
That's right.
He got me all those titles and jerseys, so I'm really grateful of that.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm a disciple of the Team GB.
Mm.
So I think it was good, and in the dimension like sport, is kind of linear. Yeah, you put in the hard work, you think about it, you deal with some setback, you can go at it. It's a little bit expected, right? It's pretty linear. In life, though, it isn't. There are a lot of variables: sickness, relationships, macro, micro. You just have a lot of things that you can't control. So you just have to be adaptable. You just have to float with it. I think the 5 year, the person that's 5 year younger, the self, is going to say, "What are you talking about, old man? What do you
Mm.
know?" I say, "Well, I think I know." And if I was more adaptable and more open minded, I think I would be even more versatile and be able to handle that cancer journey a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, and this term "better," when you think about what you've gone through, I mean, you're coming out the other side of it. We caught up for a couple of minutes right before we pressed record. Talk to us a little bit about where you are right now, because I think
Mm-hmm.
for you to say you could have maybe handled it better, I would love to just get your perspective, having gone through an adversity like this, where are you ever in a position during that process where you're in any way concerned about the way you're handling the process? Is it all about the result? Is it all about the data that's telling you like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
am I getting better? Is that enough? Does it matter how I'm doing it? I'm just curious just to hear that perspective from you, because
Mm-hmm.
again, completely unknown for me,
Mm-hmm.
really don't have any connection that could otherwise influence me on how I would see this. So, just rewinding the last 11 months for you, how much of it has been about the process and how much of it has been about simply saying, all I care about is the result. That's what I'm here for, an improved and a better result and the outcome that we all want.
So the little background, the conditions that I had, the type of cancer was 1 in 2.5 million cases
Wow.
every year on average. So you look at WebMD or something, it's not a lot of case studies. There's not a lot of recipes.
Mm.
So it was kind of experimental. Granted, cancer is kind of cancer. So I was lost going in. I just truly didn't know what to expect. So what result? I think I did not set any expectations.
Mm.
That's why I said all those goodbyes just in case. I remember on the eve of the operation, uh, doing things last minute. I was in the hotel lobby signing my medical directive so that I can get it notarized by my bank.
Mm.
And at that point, I said, "Wow, I'm ready. I'm ready. I may not even wake up from the surgery." And why so dramatic? People go through surgeries all the time. Despite all the injuries that I've sustained, I never had a surgery
Mm.
until that point.
Yeah.
So I was extremely scared, and the operation was supposed to be like, I don't know, 6, 7 hours. And I asked, "Hey, do you guys take a lunch break or something? Why it takes so long? It's supposed to be endoscopic. They're not
Mm.
even going to open up my face to get access to that." I said, "No, that's how long it takes." It ended up 12 hours.
Oh my gosh.
When I woke up, I felt like I lost a bar fight. I never been in a fight. That's why I never lost.
Mm.
And I felt like I got beat up from the inside.
Mm.
And the ordeal that followed, the surgery was hard and invasive. Uh, and it took about 6 weeks or so to kind of recover. But it was so hard and sharp, it felt like training. I was okay with that.
Yeah.
I was used to that. What was funny is the radio chemotherapy that came. Oh my God, that was a whole different level.
Yeah. And this is where we now start to actually, because I love having you walk us through the process that you chose to go with for this particular adversity that you handled over the last 11 months, but at the same time be able to just, even with your, as you alluded to, if you could go back 5 or 10 years and be like, you think you've got it figured out, you've no idea what's coming, all this kind of stuff. But there you were, coming off the back of something as invasive as you experienced with a surgery like that, and you're able to immediately just say, to the average person, this is where they would probably feel maybe defeated, or like, wow, couldn't it get any worse, or anything like that. But that's where all that work as an athlete then started to serve you. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So in the velodrome, which where I spent a lot of time on the past decade or so, it is a lot of it is mental toughness, because you go into a tournament, you go runs and runs and runs. I guess like pretty much the same kind of components. So it's a lot of mind tricks and things there. When you are huffing and puffing, you look calmed. When you are well rested, you want to be huffing and puffing. You want to play that reverse psychology, right? But I wasn't really doing that, right? I got no access to that. Yeah, at that point,
yeah. And I'd love to use this as a chance to bring in what it is you do today, and your experience, just just your from a professional side of things now, because. What's funny is that if anyone read, we're right at 20 minutes of talking now. If anybody read information about you, as we always have about our guests in the show notes, they'd be like, all right, we learned from an AI strategist, a guy who co-founded Zen Business AI, who uses AI to unlock growth. And here we are 20 minutes in, and we ain't talked about it. Aside from that use of ChatGPT, that's the only AI reference that we've had so far.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, for some of the work that you're doing today, how have you handled the continuation and the investment that goes into that area of your life, whilst also navigating this incredibly invasive personal story alongside it?
I wasn't out looking for AI, even though it was sexy, it was hyped up and everything. I needed it. You know why? I got this lab report. Okay, I can see it in the online a system called Epic. So all the hospitals and clinics are using it. I got access to the report, but the doctors weren't available for another week or two or whenever they could get to it. So guess what? I got this piece of paper that's full of Latin and Greek and English words that I don't understand. So I could just sit there patiently and wait for the doctor to reach out to me and say, okay, Ken, is all good or is all bad? I don't know. I'm looking at this piece of paper, right? So guess what? What I had access to, I got a ChatGPT subscription. I just put a PDF through it. I say, okay, take a look at this. Tell me whether I'm going to live or not. And explain it to me about a 5-year-old.
Right.
And fact check that. Please do not hallucinate, because my happiness is going to depend on that, the next few days.
Yes.
And, it's a lot of funny results, and I had a lot of doubt. I didn't trust it, but I verified that. And what's funny is, like, after a couple of days, the doctor got back to me. It was pretty much aligned. Whatever I find out from the AI was whatever I got. So that's when I find the values of it. I wouldn't use it as the only source of truth.
Sure.
I would use it as one of the advisors. And let's be honest here. We all have paid for good advice. We all have paid for bad advice. And AI is no different. So I just stumbled across it because of necessity. When I'd be looking at a computer and my head was spinning, I get dizzy. My attention and strength was very limited. So how do you leverage a little bit amount of vitality to get something done? And that is the biggest lever that I was able to find the past, year or two.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like how you've been able to do that in the last year or so?
Yeah. So I want to bring back a little story. So at the first pre-consult cancer teaching with my chemo doctor, she explained the whole procedure, the cadence, the makeup of the drugs, the side effects, and all of that. And that was like, okay, fine. You know what my question was to her? Am I going to compete ever again?
Hmm.
And oh my God, my world shattered. You know what she said? Say, Ken, possibly, but on a good day, you might go for a stroll.
Hmm.
And I don't know why my focus was on that, not my like livelihood or like survivability. I was thinking about like, am I going to compete again? And that hit me the hardest.
Yeah.
So that consultation ended, and I was just going out doing research and say, okay, are there like exercises, are there diets, are there things, supplements I could be doing during the treatment that might be able to help me? And I take that, condense that, and send it through the Epic, and ask the doctor, hey, I just stumbled upon these findings. Do you approve? And you say, okay, it's pretty good. Let's go ahead and go with that.
Hmm.
So without any kind of board certification or training, I can't even cook a chicken or anything. So for me to be able to come up with that, with the fair little amount of strength that I had during the treatment, I don't know how else I would get access to it, and that is going to apply to many dimensions of my personal and professional life afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's such a great deal of initiative within that story and the previous story as well. Just like you taking that ownership, taking that initiative to be curious, to go and learn, to be able to just equip yourself with what's coming and how to best approach it, etc. But there's a word that you used in there that I've actually heard used one other time at a conference that I was at, and it was presented beautifully, is that when you look at something like AI and you use it in this advisory capacity, the person that was speaking actually took away the word artificial and replaced it with advisory intelligence. And so for me, listening to you sort of speak to this, going back to that notion of vulnerability now, I can't help but sort of see an act of vulnerability in that too, when you think about a willingness to just to simply own and say, I don't have the answers. I don't have the answers, and I need to go get the answers from somewhere, as opposed to saying, let's just wait and see, or let's just wait until I get my next appointment with my doctor, or let's just wait until this becomes a real problem, for instance, if you're working more in the professional world.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, talk to us a little bit about the importance of that owning of, hey, not only recognizing I need the help, but then taking the step and doing something about it. Like how has that served you over the course of your own growth?
So going back to this treatment cycle and how my experience with the medical system, all the doctors, they all mean very well, and they are very resource strapped. They only have a certain amount of time with you. So the more questions, the better questions you ask, the better answers you get.
Hmm.
Right. And I think, the Western medicine philosophy is, okay, you got a symptom, let's prescribe something to deal with that. Many of them are very open. If you bring something and let them to verify it, I think they're very happy to work with you, but they may not even initiate that. So for you to be going out and getting it and getting the answers in a very neat, structured way, it makes it easy for them to answer. And that is going to move the needle, is going to move the ball further down the court.
The better questions you ask, the better answers you get. Clip it. Write it down. Remember that. I mean, literally as recent as we're recording this, just yesterday, I gave a very similar insight in a group coaching session to some executives that have been struggling in terms of being able to read whether or not certain members of the organization are really picking up and buying into some elements that they're putting out there, and they're asking for buy-in. And one thing I kind of encouraged them, I said, ask them to speak less and challenge them to ask better questions, because that will prove whether or not, one, they're listening, and two, whether or not the way in which they're listening is actually serving the outcomes and the growth that you're trying to get from this work that we're doing. And so, and man, the moment those words came out of your mouth, I was just like, everybody, clip it, copy paste, write it down, put it in your notes, tattoo it on your head. Like, again, the fact of the matter is, for you to actually have that insight while going through an adversity like you've been through the last year takes a certain sense of composure. Like there's a certain ability just listening to you talk about it, and this is my attempt at complimenting you now, Kenneth, like just to be able to say, to remain poised enough and composed enough to simply say, I just need to ensure I'm asking the best question I can to actually then ensure that my doctor can tell me what I need to hear and need to know right now, as opposed to simply assuming that they're going to figure that out on their own. I mean, that's powerful, man. That's so powerful just to sort of have that. Like, what would you put that down to? Like, where did that ability, can you track that ability earlier on in your life to ask good questions in the midst of maybe times where other people are just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what's going on right now? For you to be that composed and poised to say, Kenneth, go away, create great questions so you can get great answers. Like, where did that start? Where does that ability come from for you, do you think?
So many angles, but I think one of them is, if you flirt with danger enough, when you're faced with it, you say, okay, I've seen this. I know, there's like 67% chance it's going to go this way, and, 23% going the other way. What would be a good chain of actions? So you've done enough reps so that you are pretty calm and you can kind of improvise, right? So that's one. And second, I think like these hardships, I think these are gifts. I am so appreciative and grateful of this condition. I'm not joking with you. It has gifted me the resilience, how I see things, and then how I appreciate time. Time is a lot more finite. And it's also empowering me to say no a lot more. I say, hey, dude, I just came back from wherever I came from, so I'm going to say no. And because I got, I know my paths, I know where to go, and everything else is going to be distraction. So having that appreciation of time and being so finite, I appreciate it, other people's time when they grant me an audience, and also appreciate, that, hey, I hopefully I'll be around for a little bit longer, but, I don't know. So I get to get it done and concisely, as precisely as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's a little chilly in this room, but I'm pretty sure you just gave me chills, in the sense of just, for you to just say the hardship provides gifts, and you're still in it too. You're not saying this as a guy that's 5 years removed and confirmed that you're healthy. You're still in it. You're still coming out of it. And you sat here going, as recent as just this past 11 months, I see the gift of this last 11 months. Help somebody understand how we find and how we identify the gifts within the hardship, because I have no doubt someone's listening to this right now going through a hardship as we speak. How does one find that ability and execute on identifying gifts within a hardship?
So no human's an island. And, in sports, in maybe some individual sports, for example, you just can go into put in the hard work, and then you can see the results. When you go through a hardship, especially something that you can't possibly handle by yourself, you need to call on your tribe. And, this condition, has forced me to reach out to my tribe and say, hey, I'm embarrassed, but I am sick. I may not even be coherent. I want to give you the heads up. So when I reach out to you, or when my wife or my friends reach out to you, you know what's going on, and hopefully you'll be able to help me. But I want to give you that heads up. So that itself unlocked a lot of the relationship.
Mm.
Before I would say, happy Chinese New Year and then just kind of move on. It's kind of like a checkbox,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now I'm saying, cut the pleasantries. Hey, dude, I'm alive. This is a picture of me riding my bike in my spandex, whatever. I
Yeah.
love sending that to Lee to harass him.
Yeah.
And that actually sparks a lot of deeper connections.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like, if you're dealing with hardships, I just want you to know you're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it was the first time we met on whatever virtual platform we met on, and we only met for about 25, 30 minutes, and I can't remember the words specifically that you used, but I remember you saying something on the lines of like, man, I feel like I already know you so well and all this kind of thing. And I've joked now for a long time when anybody asks me, hey, you want to go grab coffee? I don't just do coffee anymore. Like, for me, time is way too short. Our time is too valuable for us just to exchange pleasantries for 30, 45 minutes, or just to vent, or just to bitch about whatever it is, or just complain.
Yeah.
It's just too short. Everything's too short now. It's just, if you cannot understand it, let's just create relationships that allow us to go beneath the surface
Yeah.
as soon as possible. Then the value that we can both obtain from the relationship is suddenly just, it's so vast. It's just endless. And yet so many of us we're more concerned about having 500 connections and 500 people that we can send a direct message to, or whatever it is, on any given day, and never go past the DM. And it's like, no, give me that tribe. Give me that tribe that you're speaking to here, Kenneth. Like, give me that resource of people that they know whenever you ask for 5 minutes, you might as well put a 0 after the 5, because it's never going to be 5. It's always going to be 50. And I love those relationships, and people know that about me now. It's like, don't ever ask Steve for 5 minutes, because it's never going to be 5 minutes. So buckle in. Let's get ready for that. But I mean, from what I'm understanding, does that seem like the greatest gift that's come out of the last year? Like, what else, or is there something else that you would maybe take even higher than that?
Well, so that's the key. One of them is like,
Yeah.
just willingness to admit I needed help. That
Mm-hmm.
that was a big hurdle,
Yeah.
especially from, a former athlete, recreational athlete. That you don't do that. You have to mask it. You have to, I'm okay. So that was one. And then also when defying all odds, I
Mm.
just didn't know what to expect, and it sounded pretty bad. It sounded quite bad, and I think I've talked to 7 or 8 doctors. They call it the cancer board or tumor board or whatever it's called. Is a bunch of surgeons that got together and look at the cases and then said, well, if I do surgery, chemo, radiation, my chance of surviving is about 70% within 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately I went straight to, so 30% chance of me dying. That didn't sound very good. And the doctor said, no, that's actually very good. And so that was like defying the expectations. And so I went ahead with the treatment, and it was so long and drawn out. I was so beat up. Uh, so that was the hardest part, is like during the treatment, I wanted to give up. I
Yeah.
say, I want to stop all this treatment and stop the pain. And if I go, I go.
Mm.
And now I stuck around. I finished. I didn't miss a day of infusion and chemo and all of that. And my graduation, my last day of chemo, I'm
Yeah.
going to show you a video with you.
Yeah.
I hit that the belt, and I
Yeah.
was hugging everybody. It felt like a party, and they were playing. They asked me for one song. I played, say, like a prayer. So they're playing Madonna.
uh, that's crazy, man. I mean, it's so powerful just to listen to a story like this, so fresh. We've had you're one of 3 now that we've had over the 250 plus episodes on this show that have not only come on and spoken to their journey with cancer, but it's always been close enough to having gone through it where the reality of it is still there. And, you know, me as the person that I am, that's always looking for the greatest amount of true power and insight that we can take. I'm appreciative in this really strange, crazy way. I'm appreciative that I get to speak to you in that moment, as opposed to the 10, 15, 20 years removed. Because one thing that you learn quickly in my world is that the further we get away from the experience, the harder it is to really just relate to and articulate what it is you've gone through and what it and how it was that it, you know, defined you, etc. And so that here you are, having gone through it and are going through it, and speaking so candidly, so clearly about it, speaking to the gifts that came with it. And I do want to use this as an opportunity as well now, just to look ahead a little bit, to look into the future and just say, Kenneth, like, when you look at growing from this point onwards, as we are about on this show, talk to us about your perspective of what the future holds and whether you even see it that way. Like, I'm just really fascinated now just to sort of get that forward perspective from you of how you see what's ahead for you and how you're maybe pursuing it as well.
Yeah, so I'm taking a couple initiatives. You know, I'm continue to grow, you know, my company, helping organizations that have scaling issues. You know, they have operations, sales, marketing operations. They want to make it more productive. Absolutely, that's something that we do. I started out doing federal government contracting, a lot of resources, a lot of things to be optimized. And then I went into the private sector doing private equity and a lot of sales marketing. A lot of it is swimming in tons of data, making sense out of it, right? So it's like filtering the noises. And there was, you know, a very good career. And then I, you know, got sick and I decided to, hey, instead of serving one master, I'm going to be a company and serve people that I can, you know, choose. So not only am I, you know, helping other organizations, I'm also doing some advisories for startups, and a lot of them are voluntary. And I also help out with SBA. They have organizations where everyone can go in and ask for business advice. And for my case, it's mostly technical and business and AI related. And that organization is called SCORE.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you, I think this is a really important time to ask you this question. And so I'm curious to see what you say. Like, how do you intend to define success moving forwards? It's one of those very cliche questions, I know. And it's honestly a question I maybe refrain from more often than I actually ask.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important for anyone listening to this right now to sort of get inside your perspective and get a sense of going through what you've gone through and are still going through. How on earth are you defining what success looks like for you down the road?
So it's actually got more simplified. It's not like, you know, what clothes I wore, what motorcycles I rode, whatever. It's at my funeral, my closest friends is going to say, Kent wasn't an asshole. That's the only test I care about. Actually, that came from a book like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And, you know, think backward. So I've been thinking things backward. My last day on earth, how would people remember me? Did I leave any positive impact to their life?
I love it. And here we are now at a point in closing the interview, but I got to tell you, man, like, these are the discussions why I started this podcast. I mean, and again, sometimes people let me in a little bit as we talk, and then we have these occasions like you where we just go, not only welcoming you in, but how far in do you want to come? You know, like, we could go as far in as you want to go. We let everything in so that every one of our listeners can actually look at you the way you define success. That's what I love about that response that you just gave, is there isn't going to be a single person listening to this that isn't thinking, this guy has served the crap out of me today. This guy has helped me so much today. This guy has served me so well today. There isn't a person listening to this that could possibly think ill or badly of you based on that way in which you're defining success. So I want to just simply acknowledge that right now and just say, if that is your criteria for success, you're crushing it. You're absolutely crushing it. And the more we can consistently do that for ourselves in terms of the accountability structure, let's say, around firstly creating a really simple way to define success, and then actually living it and getting daily opportunities where we can get the feedback for whether we're actually achieving it and doing it well. Mm-hmm. I want to say that you provided that lesson to me here today, is to challenge me to get articulate and clear about where I'm trying to get to, how I'm trying to get there, how I'm going to measure success, but then be willing enough to make myself vulnerable to receiving that data, that feedback often enough to assess, hey, are you staying true to that way in which you assess success? Like, are you actually giving yourself the opportunities to get that feedback? And I just want to thank you for that, man. I just want to thank you for everything that you've brought to this episode so far, today, and the way you're challenging my perspective. One that I'm very proud to say that I put a lot of investment into already, and here you are finding a way to challenge that. And so, with that being said, as I allow all my guests, where can we learn more about you, brother? Like, how can people maybe reach out to you? Like, what would be the best way for folks to do that?
Yeah. So before I go there, Steve, I want to appreciate you for having me on. And this opportunity allows me to dig really deep into your work, and it made an impact, right? It started with Lee's episodes, and then I got into your work. I got into your bio. I was stalking you a little bit so that I know who I'm talking to.
Okay.
And I got so much out of it.
Yeah.
And during that exercise, I did a lot of introspection in order to come up with some talking points that we are talking today. So I really, truly appreciate what you're doing. And, whether, they came from an athletic background or they want to, make the business, the ventures to the next high level, they are all interconnected.
Yeah. Yeah. They sure are.
Yeah.
Sure are.
And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I would love to connect with you some more if you want to have me back, and also anybody that wants to connect and chat about anything, you can find me on this website called KennethLo.me, KENNETHLO.me. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to find me, and you can book a call, you can chat, you can send me a joke. You can send me pictures, whatever. I am all games.
I love it. And that information, as always, folks, will be in our show notes. And this will not be the last time, well, obviously will definitely not be the last time you and I speak, but at the same time, it will not be the last time. I promise that to our listeners, that you will join us on the show. I look forward to being able to have you on in the years to come, and to be able to revisit where you are in that moment versus where you are in this moment. I think that in itself will continue to be a wonderful teacher for anybody that tunes in. But in the meantime, brother, best of luck with everything. Thank you again for your time and just your generosity of insight today. It's been a true pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. And Steve, I want to use FOMO on you.
Yeah.
It's limited supply. You gotta do it quick, because I don't know where I'm gonna go.
Oh, man. Appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Steve.
And my thanks again to Ken for joining us on this episode. I want to quickly speak to the insight around hardships providing gifts. Think of that for a moment. What have you experienced in 2025 so far as you listen to this, where you feel as though you've gone through some form of a hardship? And you've been so focused on how difficult it was that you've been unable to see what it may be doing for you that's a good thing. It could be a gift. It could be something that without it, you cannot become a version of you that serves the growth that you're trying to achieve. That without the hardship, it's not readying you for what could be coming your way that's even greater, even more adversity. But challenges nonetheless that are going to serve where it is you're trying to get to. For someone like Ken to just have such clarity around the gift that the past year has been for him in so many ways, while in the more obvious ways, it's undoubtedly been the hardest year of his life. There's going to be some costs. There's going to be elements of hardships that truly wane on us and leave us completely discouraged, leave us as a lesser version of ourselves. But then we can respond. We can start to identify how it is we come out of the hardship and why it is, that the hardship itself can be something that truly serves where it is we're trying to get to. So I want to challenge how you frame challenges today. I want you to look for ways to identify the good that may have come out of some of the hardships that you've experienced. And I want you to use that perspective now to serve you as you go and pursue other hardships, to actually be enticed to go through these hardships knowing that they somehow provide a gift. My thanks again to Kenneth for joining us, and my thanks to you as always for listening. I hope you took as much from that personal account of Ken's as I did, and I appreciate the willingness to share so openly for you, the listener, to understand that wherever you are on your journey right now, there's someone that has gone through or that is going through things that, quite frankly, are bigger, that are greater trials, and that there's something in that we can actually just take stock and say, maybe things aren't as bad or as difficult as I sometimes make them out to be. Keep listening. Keep coming back. If you are a first-time listener, thank you for listening all the way through the episode. I encourage you, as always, to subscribe. Make sure you're sharing the show. And in the meantime, folks, best of luck with anything and everything you have going on in your world. And I look forward to doing this again with you very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to Growth Ready. If you liked what you heard and are feeling ready to grow, be sure to leave a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share the episode with someone you know is ready to fuel their growth journey today. We love our community, so don't hesitate to reach out to us at podcast@growthready.com. And until next time, we are Growth Ready, and you will be too.